Julian Carter adjusted his navy blue tie in the mirror, the knot perfectly centered against his crisp white shirt. Morning sunlight spilled across the marble countertop and gleamed off the glass awards lining the shelf behind him, recognition of a career built from the ground up. The skyline stretched behind him through floor-to-ceiling windows, a reminder of how far he had come. He was the CEO of Carter & Wells, one of the most influential venture capital firms in the country, and today was the most important deal of his year. He kissed his wife Amara on the cheek, ruffled his son's curls, and headed down to the garage. His black Range Rover sat polished and waiting. As he drove through the quieter residential streets to avoid midtown traffic, he rehearsed the key points of the meeting in his mind. This deal would open the door to a groundbreaking green energy startup, revolutionary tech that could reshape an entire industry. But 10 minutes from the office, flashing red and blue lights lit up behind him. He sighed, already reaching for his license and registration. The officer approached cautiously, one hand resting on his holster. Julian rolled down the window. "Morning, officer. Is there a problem?" "License and registration," the officer said, scanning the interior of the SUV. His eyes returned to Julian's face. Julian moved slowly, narrating each action as he retrieved the documents. The officer glanced at the license, then back at Julian. "Is this your vehicle?" "Yes. Registered under my name. Julian Carter." The officer's voice tightened. "I'm going to need you to step out of the vehicle." Julian blinked. "Why?" "Got a report of a stolen black SUV nearby. Your vehicle matches the description. I can assure you this car wasn't stolen. I have full documentation. Step out. Now." Julian hesitated. He checked the time, 7:48 a.m. The meeting started at 9. 2 more police cars pulled up. One officer had his hand resting on a taser. Another began circling the car with a flashlight. Julian stepped out slowly, palms open. "I'm the CEO of Carter & Wells," he said calmly. "I have identification on me. This is a misunderstanding. Hands on the hood." Julian's body went rigid. "Officer, please. Now." Cold metal met his palms as they cuffed him. His tailored suit jacket pulled tight against his shoulders. The steel bit into his wrists. A neighbor across the street stepped out, phone in hand. Another woman whispered something to her husband. A child stared from a front porch. Minutes later, a voice crackled through the officer's radio. "Negative match. Suspect vehicle already recovered 5 blocks away. Different VIN." They uncuffed him without a word of apology. "You're free to go," the officer said, handing back his license. Julian stared at him. "You cuffed me in public. You didn't even check the VIN before backup arrived." The officer didn't respond. Just walked back to his cruiser. Julian stood there for a long moment, his wrists red, the air heavy. At the office, he arrived 15 minutes late. The boardroom was already filled with murmurs and coffee cups. Lisa Wells, his business partner, didn't miss a beat as he entered. "There he is," she said with a smile. "Julian, we were just going over the final projections." He straightened his tie and nodded. "Apologies for the delay." The meeting proceeded smoothly. Contracts signed. Hands shaken. Millions secured. When the room cleared, Lisa looked at him sharply. "What happened?" "Pulled over. Accused of stealing my own car." Her mouth tightened. "Again?" He nodded. "Again. You okay?" He gave her a tired smile. "Just bruises. Not just on my wrists." That night, Julian stood again before the mirror. He removed the tie and unbuttoned his shirt. His reflection stared back, clean-cut, accomplished, tired. He thought about the look on the officer's face. The suspicion. The assumption. He had done everything right. The degrees, the suits, the smile. He had co-founded a billion-dollar firm, donated to campaigns, sat on boards, lived in a high-rise with security and a doorman. And yet, none of it stopped them from seeing him as a threat. Not a CEO. Just a black man in a nice car. He read his son a bedtime story, one about a lion who becomes king. His son's eyes sparkled with curiosity. When he finally drifted off to sleep, Julian lingered by the doorway, wondering what world he was preparing his son to inherit. A week later, Julian stood on stage at a diversity summit. Hundreds filled the seats, young entrepreneurs, investors, students. Cameras streamed his image across the country. When I was pulled over last week, he began, I realized something I've known for years, but never fully accepted. No matter how high I climb, I am never above suspicion. He paused. The room was silent. I was cuffed and humiliated because I fit the description. That description was simple: black man. Nice car. No questions asked. He looked out into the crowd. I'm not telling this story for pity. I'm telling it because it's not just mine. This happens every day to people who don't have a platform, or a camera, or a lawyer on speed dial. My success doesn't protect me. It just makes the injustice harder to excuse. He let that settle before continuing. If I, as CEO in a suit, can be treated like a suspect before a single word is exchanged, what about the kid in the hoodie? The cashier heading home after a shift? The teenager riding his bike through a gated community? Racism isn't always loud. Sometimes it's a silent decision made in a split second, one that assumes the worst. His voice softened. I wear this suit not to be seen as human, but because I have to prove that I am, every single day. I want to build a world where that's no longer necessary. Where being black doesn't mean being automatically suspect. The crowd stood in applause. Some cheered. Others wept. Julian Carter went on to create a nonprofit, Clearsight, dedicated to police training and legislative reform. His firm grew. His reputation grew. But the memory of cold metal on his wrists never left him. One day, years later, while driving his son to school, he noticed flashing lights in the rearview mirror. His son looked up at him. Did we do something wrong, Daddy? Julian smiled gently and shook his head. No, son, he said. Sometimes people just see what they want to see. But we're going to change that. And he meant it. Because change doesn't begin in courtrooms. It begins with stories. And Julian Carter had lived one the world needed to hear. In a world where image often precedes identity, Julian Carter's story reminds us that no level of success can shield someone from the weight of prejudice. A man who built his life through hard work, education, and excellence was still reduced, in a moment, to a stereotype, not because of what he did, but because of how he looked. So what do we learn from this? We learn that racism isn't always loud. It's not always marked by slurs or obvious hate. Sometimes, it's quiet. It's the hand that hovers near the holster. It's the suspicion triggered by skin before credentials. It's the decision made in a split second that says, he doesn't belong here. Julian was a CEO, a husband, a father, a leader. But for those officers, all they saw was a black man in a nice car. And that's the heart of the lesson: privilege does not erase prejudice. For individuals, this is a call to wake up. To recognize your own unconscious biases. Ask yourself, would I have reacted the same way if he were white? Would I have assumed danger where there was none? We must listen more, judge less, and challenge the stereotypes we've been taught, whether by media, culture, or silence. For law enforcement, this story isn't just a reflection, it's a mirror. One that shows how much trust has been broken. Training must go beyond tactics. It must address perception, bias, and the psychology of de-escalation. Officers must be taught to assess facts, not fears. Accountability isn't anti-police. It's pro-justice. And justice that doesn't apply to everyone equally is not justice at all. For the government, the path forward is through policy and protection. We need mandatory body cameras, better oversight, community review boards, and national standards for use of force and racial profiling. We need investment in education and communities, not just prisons and patrols. And we need to listen, not to polls, but to the people. For society, we must rewrite the stories we tell about race, power, and identity. From classrooms to boardrooms, from newsrooms to social media feeds, we have to stop portraying blackness as threat and success as something that needs validation. Julian's suit didn't protect him because racism doesn't care about your resume. But his courage to speak up, that's where change begins. So, what is the way forward? It's not quick. It's not easy. But it's clear. It starts with listening even when it's uncomfortable. It grows through empathy when we choose to see the humanity behind the headlines. It solidifies through action when we vote, protest, legislate, and hold systems accountable. Julian used his voice, his platform, and his pain to light a path forward. The question is, will we follow it? Or will we keep pretending the suit fits everyone the same? The time to act is now, not because it's safe, but because it's right.